Shalom lekulam, and welcome to this lesson on the book of Ruth, Megillat Ruth. This lesson is titled Kabbalistic Revelations of the book of Ruth. What we're gonna be doing during this lesson, we're gonna probably do this in a two-part series. We're gonna be reading the Megillah, and we're gonna be stopping at certain times during the reading of the Megillah, and we're going to talk about what Kabbalistic revelations we have there. When we're studying the book of Ruth, we need to keep in mind that the book of Ruth is basically revelation of the secret of how we are supposed to rescue the fallen sparks that are among the nations. And this is what the Megillah Ruth is going to teach us. And these sparks are also, or this Megillah is not only about how to redeem these sparks that are among the nation, but also is going to show us how reincarnation also plays a role in this redemption of these sparks. So this is something that we're going to be studying as we go through. So in order to put this the Megillah, or what happened during the times of Ruth, is that the Megillah Ruth happens during a time that is called the time of the judges of Israel. And during that time, the Megillah tells us, when it starts, basically tells us the following. It tells us, that, and it happened in the days when the judges judged, that there was a famine in the land, and a man went from Bethlehem in Judah, and, to sojourn in the field of Moab, he, his wife, and his two sons. But during the time of the judges, it also, the sources tell us, that people used to do whatever they basically wanted. People were basically doing what they thought it was good at that time. For example, if we read in Judges 17:6, 18:1, 19:1, and 21:25, he says, that in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. Okay, so this is the time where there was kind of like a kind of confusion, and it's very important to understand that, because it was a time in which the Kabbalah calls basically the time of chaos, a time of in which these tohu vabohu, these forces of chaos were actually in power, and around that time, and it was because of the people basically not having a guide, not having a way to know where to go after the exodus of Egypt. And we can go in depth on why they fell into that state, in the state of judges. As you guys know, judges means severity, means some kind of force against advancing, because there's two things: there's fear, or there's no light basically shining in the vessel. When it comes to fear for the creator, that's a state in which the person acknowledge the evil in them, and then that fear for the creator will eventually lead the person to love the creator. Then instead of serving out of fear for the creator, the person start serving the creator out of love. Okay, in the case of this fear that is restrictive, is a fear that actually is making the person, or making the vessel, not develop, and it's a different kind of fear. It's a fear that it's anti-development of the soul. Okay, so let's start with the Megillah, so we can start. The first thing is, that, like I mentioned before, the Megillah Esther, Megillah Ruth is part of a group of other Megillah. We have in the past studied Megillah Esther. Um, we also have made a study of the book of Jonah, which I'm gonna remake because the sound wasn't good when I made that those lessons. I'm gonna remake those. But Megillat Ruth, the one that we're studying right now, is basically about how to rescue the sparks from among the nations. And the nations, we need to understand that the nations are our egoistic desires, and these egoistic desires are the desire to receive, right? And the sparks are the desire to bestow. And sometimes these lights are inside these vessels that we call the klipot. And the klipot, we have sometimes a misinterpretation that the klipots are evil. The klipots are not evil. We call them evil in order to distinguish, what's holy and what is not holy. But in reality, the klipot are like this shell that protects, the seed, right? That seed has the potential to become a tree, but it needs to be protected by that shell, that klipot. Once the shell is broken and the seed is ready, this seed is going to eventually become a tree. And that's how you need to see the klipot, even though you're going to see a lot of symbolism that the klipots are from the side of Tumah, which is the side of unholiness and all that. But in reality, everything that the Creator has created is not evil. We just call it evil according to our own egoistic perception, according to what gives pleasure and what gives pain. Okay? So in this case, we're going to see that the seeds of certain souls, in this case specifically Malon, it's trapped and it needs to be liberated somehow. And that's basically the story of Ruth. And because that light was basically trapped within the nations, it needed to be redeemed, and eventually that light or that soul was going to become the seed of what is to become in the future the seed for the Messiah, the seed for the future King David and also the Messiah. So when we look at the Megillah, we're going to have certain characters in there. We're going to have, first of all, two places. It's going to be Moab, or the nations, and Israel. Moab and the nations are going to be located in the side of what is called the egoistic desire. So the nations are going to be located in what is called Malchut, but specifically, or more specifically, that area which is like the lowest part of Malchut, which is more egoistic, right? And Ruth comes from that area as well. The only difference is that Ruth, right, represents the whole Malchut. Malchut's a desire to receive. Her mother-in-law, which we're gonna know her as Naomi, she represents Bina, which is a desire to bestow. However, because these male aspects of her Parsufim, right, of what she is part of this system, she cannot give anymore because she lost the son. And the only way that she can actually give is by giving her attributes to Ruth. And in this way, Ruth can redeem not only Naomi, but also the soul of her son, or her husband, husband's and Naomi's son, Malon, or Machlon. And that's going to be happening through a redeemer. That redeemer is called Boaz. And Boaz represents basically the area that we call Seramping. And this is how basically we're going to see is basically how the system between Malchut, Bina, and Seramping interact in order to bring that central column from where not only King David, which is the corrected aspect of Malchut, uh, not only also is going to bring the Messiah, right, which is the corrected aspects of Tiferet and Yesod, okay, which is the central column, basically, central column that connects everything. The central column is also known as the tree of life. So this is basically what we are going to be studying in the book of Esther, this system. Now, if you're familiarized with our lessons already and the graphs that we use, so when we look at these graphs, basically it's the same one as this one. It's just a little more complicated. You're gonna have the word of Atzilut, the word of Bia. And what you're going to see is that Moab, the nations, is the egoistic desires that exist in this world, okay, which is known as the nations. And then Israel is going to be the less egoistic desires. Those egoistic desires are a desire to bestow, which are in the part that we call Atzilut, okay. Eventually, as we read, we're going to see how there's a mention of the legs or the feet of Boaz, and that actually is going to be here. Ragalaim here are basically the legs, okay, and it's basically like this aspect here which represents Malchut, and this aspect here that represents basically the altruistic desires of Bina. They interact, and eventually the legs of what we call the beginning of the messianic force or the redeemed force is going to be revealed by Malchut, when Malchut attained the aspects of Bina. And this is when we're going to see Ruth laying down next to Boaz and uncovering his feet, his leg, okay? And that's what we're going to see here, okay? So we're not gonna go in depth for now on this, because we have to read the Megillah. But before, let's talk a little bit about the secret behind the name Ruth. So Ruth, like we said, represents Malchut. Malchut has a name of God in it, and that name of God is Adonai. Adonai. So the name Adonai, which is this one right here, it belongs to Malchut, equals 65. When we do what is called theosophical simplification, we add the 6 and the 5, that gives us 11. And 11 is a very important number because 11 is the number of the 11 ingredients that were used in order to make the incense for the tabernacle and the temple. And also 11 is because the incense represents prayers, it ascends on high. It represents that. It represents, the ascension, or the force of ascension, the force of a request for the light above. Okay. Now, when we spell these letters of the name Adonai as Aleph, Dalet, Nun, and Yod, when we count this letter, we're gonna have 12 letters. Each letter represents one tribe of the nation of Israel. However, when we take the letters that represent the name Adonai, the letters that are left, like the Lamed Pei, Lamed Tav, Vav Nun, and Vav Dalet, the numerical value of each of those letters is equal 606, which equals also to the name Ruth. So Ruth is actually an allusion to the representation of the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom, the Malchut, right, of Israel. And inside those letters as well, when we add 6 plus 6, right, because the 0 has no value, we have 12. So it is telling you basically that this name and these letters coming from the name Adonai, which is Malchut, they are not only related to the 12 tribes, but they're related to the kingship, to the kingdom, and to the king that is going to come, that is called David, and also the king Messiah that is going to come also from that line. So that's the first secret, that we need to get from that we need to understand from the Megillah Esther, which is very important. So now we're going to also talk about something very interesting. When we look at the story of Ruth, Ruth has kind of like a parallel story with another character in the Torah. The character, his name is Tamar, and Tamar and Ruth, have a lot of similarities. So in both cases, two males died. In the case of Tamar, two of her husbands died, and she needed to be basically redeemed by the father of her two husbands, which was Yehuda. And in the case of Ruth, two males also died, but one of them was her husband, and she needed to be redeemed by Boaz. The thing is that both of these women, they received redemption by a form of non-conventional manners. So it was in a way that they could have been easy. The zohar from Parsha Vayeshev, Kabbalah Center, the unabridged version of the Baal HaSulam commentary. And she put off her widow's garment. Item 191 all the way to 194. And it says, the seed of Judah was established with two women, who bore King David, King Solomon, and Messiah. The two women, Tamar and Ruth, resemble each other. Both Tamar and Ruth lost their first husbands and replaced them through who was next of kin to his dead sons, and thus worthy of taking her in levirate marriage. The reason for her act is stated in the verse, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him a wife. As from the book of Genesis 38:14, she therefore did this by her father-in-law. Ruth's first husband died, as did that of Tamar, and then she did the deed by Boaz, as it is written, and uncovered his feet and lay herself down. That's from Ruth chapter 3:7. She then gave birth to Obed. You might ask why Obed was not born to another woman instead of in this manner. He answers, assuredly it was necessary that she and not any other woman bore him. From these two, the seed of Judah was built and established. Both did well and brought kindness upon the dead, so they would later be perfected in the world. This is explanation of the version. As long as the husbands of Tamar and Ruth were alive, there was no praise to their name. After they died, their wives were taken in levirate marriage, and the kingdom of David, Solomon, and Messiah descended from them. Both Tamar and Ruth did kindness and truth by the dead, and the Holy One, blessed be He, helped them in the very act. Thus all is fitting as it should be. Happy is he who studies the Torah day and night, as it is written, but you shall meditate therein day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that it is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall have good success. Okay, so there we have basically an explanation of this pattern that exists between these two women, and and even though their actions, towards the males were around those times, considered unconventional, they were helped and supported by the Creator. Okay, so it's something very important to understand as we start. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Yehudah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons was Malon and Kilion, Ephratites from Bethlehem in Yehudah, and they came into the country of Moab and remained there. So what it's telling us here basically that there was a famine in the land, right? And when it tells us, that they were Ephratites, that means that there were people that were of good standing, people basically with money, people with good possessions and things like that. So what we see is that um, and basically an ish mi Beit Lechem, Yehuda. So a man, meaning that he was just, not only a person with possessions, but was also at this point a person full of and land, like the country of Moab, that we know, was basically prohibited to live in there, and it was a country of idolatry. So this person was abandoning his people in order to go to another place because there was a famine in his land. He didn't want it to lose what he had at that moment. Probably he didn't even want it, even to share what he had because then, he needed to take care of the poor, right? So he went to Moab, and then in the second verse is the second that the man Tabul Malchut. To me shall kingship come, and kingship eventually came through him, but in a different way than probably he thought it was gonna be. Okay, so this is important. The Sodah Hadash says, that Elimelech wanted to flee this divine decree of the famine and was unsuccessful from escaping it. This is implied in the words, Vayelach Esh, a man went, and basically a man went. He didn't want anybody to know his name, so he went incognito, right? Like in a hidden way. But Midat Hadin, God's attributes of judgment, identify him and call him by name Elimelech. And then it says the name was Elimelech, and this leader from Israel now will have justice, visiting him, and this is very important. The reason why he died and his sons died. The name of Naomi can be translated as pleasant, and keep that in mind because eventually uh, there'll be she will call herself a different name. She will call herself Mara. The names of his two sons, Malom and Chilion, he says that their name indicate that they were blotted out and perished from the world. And the reason for that is because they were in agreement with their father in order to leave the land of Israel. I remember Bethlehem. It says, basically this is a bait. It means, it's a house, right? So that means there's some kind of protection. But then it says, that they went to sojourn in the country of Moab, right? So when, let's see if I can. So when we see here, basically they to become strangers in that country of Moab, they basically became disconnected from their own people in a point that they were not anymore in a bait in a house. Now they were just in the open, basically in a field, in the open with no protection. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her two sons. And they took wives for themselves of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. And these two women that we see here, remember these two males represent the right side and the left side. So you're going to see the left side is not going to be redeemed. The right side, which is going to be Malon, is going to be redeemed. You're going to have Orpah, who belongs to the left side, that she will not follow Naomi because she has this egoistic desire for herself, so she's going to go back. And then you're going to have Ruth that has those non-egoistic desire, altruistic desire, and desire for connection with the Creator, and she's the one that follows Naomi. Okay? And then he says that Malon and Chilion died, both of them, so that the woman was basically was it's a bad translation here, was bare of her two sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, so that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had her in the country of Moab, that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Right? So remember Bethlehem. Now the word Lechem is mentioned again. So let me go back here. And let me see if I can go lesson here. Okay. So what's happening here is the following. What's happening is that forget here about Ruth, forget about Boaz for now. Okay, so let's take Boaz out of here. Let's take Ruth out of here. So what you're gonna have is the two sons of Naomi, right? Let me format this so it can look better. Are going to be basically located in this way, like in this column here, and the other one in this column here. One is going to belong to the side of Chesed, and the other one from the side of Geburah. So the side of Geburah is going to be Orpah, and also let me see, we got Orpah, we got Ruth, and then we're gonna have Malon and Chilion. So Chilion is gonna be here, Malon is gonna be here, Orpah is gonna be here, and Ruth is gonna be here. But remember, on this side, so in this area here, you're also gonna find, let me go over here and copy this. you're also gonna find the following. You're gonna find that each of these columns are also parts of things, tree of lives, right? So this tree of life are basically what we're gonna see here. So then this tree here, which is a bigger tree, we're gonna talk about this woman here, which is gonna be Ruth, and this one here is gonna be Orpah. So this one is the one that belongs to the right side, and then what's happening is from this side, this is gonna be the whole concept, which we have it here, in a bigger. We're just eliminating basically all this and using this tree as this tree here in order to have Ruth here and Boaz here. And you're gonna see Boaz, and these are gonna be those who are tending his field, and the one that tells Boaz that these women down here is very a very good woman that that really cares about Naomi. Okay, so let's continue with the verse. I hope that has been clarified about Malon Kilion and Orpah and Ruth, where they come from. So then, let me change the scene. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. So she went out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they took the road to return to the land of Yehudah. So very important, bread is basically the last resort of a lot of work. You gotta pick the grain, you gotta basically shake it to take the grain out of these sheaves. You have to grind that grain, then you have to prepare the dough, and then you have to bake that dough in order to make it a bread. So it's basically telling you that this is a work of correction. That's the symbolism of the bread. It's a work of our actions for 7 days. And now, the Creator basically is visiting the land of Israel. There's light filling the land of Israel, that their effort, the correction, is now taking place in Bethlehem, in Yehudah. Now she's going to the land of Yehudah. In this case, doesn't say Bethlehem, it says Yehudah. Yehudah means, that has to do with Yehud, with the unification. So now she needs to go to this land of unification with her 2 daughters-in-law. Okay? And it says, and Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go, return each of you to her mother's house. The Lord deal loyally with you, and you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they say to her, no, we will return with thee to thy people. And Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband tonight and should bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Will you for them refrain from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me much for your sake that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lift up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth held fast to her. Okay, so this is very important because it's a tradition for people who are in the process of conversion, that there's a tradition, especially in the Orthodox, that you should ask over and over to a person that come from the nations or about Teshuvah, this is really what you want to do. Are you sure you want to do this? It's a lot of questioning, and then when the person really, insists that yes, they want to be part of Israel, then there's no more, asking. It's for sure, sincere act of desire for conversion. And this is basically what Naomi is doing. making sure that there's no egoistic desire on these two other desires, right? If they're corrected, they will cling to what Naomi represents, which is the desire to bestow. However, as we're gonna see in Naomi cannot bestow because now there's some kind of a barrier that the light of Chokmah cannot go down and give birth to a son. So Ruth or Orpah, can have a husband. That disappeared. The life of Chokmah is no longer there. Therefore, their husbands are dead because that means absence of light inside the vessel. But the only way for Naomi to finally have a family or something like that is if these or one of these women desire basically to cling to her. And as we see here, that Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth held fast to her, right? So Ruth was clinging to her. Ruth was this desire to elevate itself to that level of Naomi and become a mother for the nation of Israel. And then we're gonna have these famous words that we're gonna read really soon as we and she said, once again, this is the third time, and she said, behold, thy sister-in-law your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Go back after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth says, entreat me not to leave you, or to return from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. Only death can basically make us apart. So, why did Ruth actually decided to answer this way to her mother-in-law? So now we're gonna go to a complicated concept, So this is what's happening. What's happening was that let's see if I can take myself out of there. So what happened is that Naomi was telling Ruth about the 4 different kinds of death that a person that leaves the land of Israel and becomes an idolater and basically does not connect with the Creator can have. And these deaths are spiritual death, basically. And when Naomi is warning Ruth about these type of deaths, once you're inside and you do these things, this kind of death is what's going to happen to you and that kind of stuff. So Naomi was telling her about the death, which is the stoning, the burning, decapitation, strangulation. And these deaths have to do with the words of Asilupria Yasira. And in the psychological aspects, right, has to do with the stoning, has to do with the spiritual, the burning with the intellect and the mind, decapitation with the emotions and desires of our heart, and strangulation is basically the physical death, basically the physical body. And when you read a Kabbalistic Siddur, you're gonna find those it's like a kind of meditation in which we meditate in those 4 types of death, because what we need to do is to meditate on giving over our life for the sanctification of the name of the Creator. And we accept for ourselves these 4 capital punishments, like stoning, burning, decapitation, strangulation. And what we're doing is that when we do this with our heart, we're connecting our souls, or different parts of the soul that are like the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, with uh, with each other, and at the same time, these deaths that are supposed to basically be our deaths are gonna be given to our evil inclination, and this is why we meditate on Sekilas, Sifra, Hereg, and Henek, and they have these names of God, like the Yod-He, and the Vav, and the He, and the Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yod, which is Adonai, right, and the name Ehyeh. And also, the representation of each parsu, which is Ab, Sag, Ma, and Bon, and the variations of what we call the miluin, the feelings of the name of God as they are spelled, the name of the Yod-He and the Vav-He as it is spelled with the feelings, and to create these parsus of Sag, Ma, and Bon. And for more of this, what does this mean, the Ab, Sag, Ma, and Bon, we're more than welcome to go to our intermediate lessons where we explain how those parsuf actually were created with these names. Okay, so let's continue with so now we see, that she is accepting, all these punishment on her, that she's willing to go to the land of Israel and be willing, to suffer this this punishment in case, things don't go well, right? So the two of them went, and until they came to Bethlehem, and it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem that all the city was astir on their arrival, and they say, "Is this Naomi?" And remember, the name Naomi means basically like this person that is a person that is pleasant, right? And Naomi, what she says is the following. She says that, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." Okay? So, then she explained, "I went out full," meaning that she went out, probably pregnant or with kids, "and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why then do you call me Naomi, seeing that the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So when you go here, um, the name that she uses is the Yod-He and the Vav-He, right? But then she mentions, the name Shaddai. The name Shaddai basically is this God that is a God that nourishes, a God that gives. It's a God, actually, the aspect of God, that was manifested to Abraham, which is the aspect of mercy, right? So Naomi returned, and Ruth, the Moabite woman, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So the beginning of the barley harvest is basically the beginning of the festival of the counting of the Omer. Okay? And something very important is that we need to understand is that the name Ruth the name Ruth, as we mentioned before, let me go back to the slide and put this back here, okay? The name Ruth equals 606. So according to the Zohar Hadash, the Torah has 606 commandments, and when you add 7 commandments to it, that would be 613 commandments. Those 7 commandments are the commandments of the Noahide laws, which are incumbent upon every person that is a non-Jew. So Ruth, not only her name, but also the way she behaves, she is an embodiment of all these 613 commandments. Her name is 606, numerical value. And since she is following Ruth, for sure she's one of these Noahide, because she's still called a Moabite. So she embodies, or she's practicing these 7 Noahide laws. So she's considered the convert by excellence, because she not only have the name Ruth, which is in her soul imprinted, the 606 commandments, but she also was practicing the 7 Noahide laws. Okay, so that's something that I want to make sure it was understood. Let's go back to, so this is why it's called Ruth the Moabite woman, not yet, completely part of Israel at this moment. So we are in chapter 2. Now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless thee. And according to some commentaries, this means, that Boaz basically lost his wife. And since there's a law that you should not say hello, or to a person that is in mourning, the person that is in mourning basically says the hellos first, right? And this is why he said, the Lord be with you. And they answer him, the Lord bless thee. And Boaz said to his servants, that was said over there, reapers, whose maiden is this? So he puts his eyes right away to these strangers that is in the field, right? So who are these servants? Okay, so these are the servants, these Sephirot, that basically are part of Zeramping. These are the servants that are gonna give Boaz information about Malchut, which is Ruth. Okay, now the field. What does the field has to do with all this? So let's see. In the words of Rabbi Isaac Luria, he says that we feel, called a white field in the Talmud, correspond to the primordial world of Tohu, while orchards correspond to the world of Tikkun. The world of Tohu was created, is self-destructive with the breaking of the vessels, due to the great light and the lack of the development of those vessels. Then the world of Tikkun was emanated, and in a pre-rectified state, Tikkun is another word for the word of Atzilut, right? Their God infinite light is revealed within the vessel of the 10 Sephirot. Okay, so this is Atzilut, right? The world of Tohu, though it didn't disappear from the whole scene, it basically fall into pieces or broke into pieces, called sparks. These sparks fell down to the lower worlds here, the spiritual worlds of creation, formation, and the physical world of Asiya. This is why the spark in the world of Tohu fell down to lower worlds in this physical world, and this is why we need to basically elevate those sparks from this lower realm to this higher realm. And this is what the book of Ruth is going to continue teaching us about that, right? And this is what the field actually means. The field is basically this world of, or primordial world, that was somehow destroyed. Now, also, the wheat fields, according to the RE, a wheat field and orchards, are places that you cultivate. You basically have to work. The difference between these two fields is that with the wheat, you receive compensation in a faster way. While with the orchard, you plant the tree and you have to wait years in order to receive any type of fruit, right? So this implies that fields and orchard both correspond to the world of tikkun. Wheat field produces, that what benefit mankind and contributes to our civilization, right? Uh, when the civilization or society embodies, these acts of tikkun and rectification. And field can refer also to the word of tohu, disorder and ruin. So we can have what is called, kind of like we feel that we can reap our fruits right away and satisfy our desires right away. But if you've been studying Kabbalah, you will understand that all these desires and things that we are basically trying to satisfy are fleeting. They're like the wheat. You work hard. You work really hard to make that bread, and after you eat that bread, eventually you're gonna have hunger again, right? So that's the difference between that. Now, when you have an orchard, the orchard is different. You're not planting based on what is going to give you fruit right away. It's not gonna be just about you. This time you're planting for future generations. And what we have here is that in the beginning, every person is going to start working what is called lolishma for their own sake. And eventually that's gonna take them to a place or a level in spirituality in which they're gonna develop this spiritual desire for the creator, and then start acting in a way that they are going to be doing the work for the love of the creator, and that's called lishma, in the name of the creator. So this is the symbolism of the wheat field of that we see here. Basically, the wheat field is tohu, and an orchard is the tikkun. So the wheat field is going to refer to the words of Bia, the words of Bria, Yesira, and Asiya. Okay? And trapped within these words are gonna be sparks of the broken word of Tohu. And then what we need to do is basically in here try to start gathering those sparks and elevate them into or to the word of Hatzilut. Okay? These words remain unrectified as of this moment, right? And through really hard labor and purification, the sparks that are trapped in this world of Tohu are going to be redeemed. And this rectification is going to happen in the Messianic era. Now, the orchard refers to the word of Tikkun, which is the word of Atzilut. And this word is already in a state of perfection. The orchard, however, requires a lot of labor in order to elevate the status or elevate, the spiritual desire for the love of the creator, right? But once the person elevate, or basically, elevate these sparks within himself and also of humanity, it's done in a way that is not egoistic, because it's not thinking about what is to satisfy our desires now, but to satisfy the desire of the whole congregation, of the whole soul of Adam Harishon. Okay. So below here, the light of the Creator is in concealment. Above here, the light of the Creator is in revelation. So when we study the book of Zohar, and we study, the Kabbalah of any book on the writings or in the Torah, what we're doing is we're elevating something that is written in letters, because the letters are down here. We're elevating those symbols, those vessels, to a level that is loftier and more spiritual when we study that. So that's important, basically, in Shavuot, mostly, not only we're celebrating Matan Torah, we need to also do what is called Tikkun LeShavuot, in which we're studying the whole Torah, but the point is not study and go back and learn the whole Torah. The whole point is to elevate those vessels to a higher realm, and that's how we do that Tikkun. That's how we connect. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. We still have time. So, and the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, "It is a Moabite girl who came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and has continued from the morning until now, scarcely spending any time in the hut." Then said Boaz to Ruth, "Hearest thou not, my daughter?" Basically, do not fear. "Go not to glean in another field, do not go away from here, but keep close here to my maidens. Let thy eyes be on the field that they reap, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art thirsty, go to the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn." Okay. So when he's talking about this, it's talking basically about water, right? Even though it's not gonna be found written, but basically saying, that the waters that the men are pulling it basically is what is called chesed, what is called chesed. Okay. Then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you shouldn't take notice of me, seeing I am a stranger?" And Boaz answered and said to her, "It has been fully related to me, all that thou hast done to thy mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left thy father and your mother and the land of thy birth, and have come to a people that you have not known before. The Lord recompense your deed, and may a full reward be given to you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "Let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and you have spoken gently to your handmaids, though I am not even like one of your handmaids." So, what are these handmaids, right? What she's talking about? So, like I mentioned before, each sephira here is basically those servants that are in the field. These sephira, each of them have a male and a female aspect. The male and female aspect in Malchut are not completely corrected. And Malchut here, the female aspect of Malchut here, is very egoistic. However, the female aspect of Yesod, Hod, Nesak, Tiferet, Geburah, and Chesed are not as egoistic as this here. So this is the maidens, basically. Follow the maidens. Malchut should be corrected here. In every malchut here shall be corrected as well, in order to reach Binah, which is the corrected state of Ruth, to become part of Israel. And that is done, when this malchut start correcting each malchut in Serampin, the unification happens, and then the life of Chokmah can come down, and Ruth will bear a son. That is, as we know, is going to be called Oved, which means servant of the Creator. So Boaz said to her at the mealtime, "Come here and eat of the bread, and dip your morsel in vinegar." And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was replete, and left. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her even glean more among the sheaves, and do not approach her. And let fall also some of the handful on purpose for her, and leave them, so she may glean them, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening, and beat out what she has gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. So what is an ephah? So let's talk about that. So there's a part here that it says, that she, when they were talking to Boaz, let me go back. So in this verse here, which is chapter 2, verse 7, when he says, that when she said, "I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves." So she came and has continued from the morning until now, scarcely spending any time in the hut. Meaning, when you look at it in here, you're going to find the word Shabbat hidden, right? Shabbat, the word house, and that's very important because she's been working. She has not been basically. It's a clue basically. Let's put it this way. It's a clue that tells us, that she's been working. She's been correcting, right? 6 days of work, and the seventh day, which is the Shabbat, she barely has done that. So she hardly has done that. So there's still work to do, and but then he tells, when she was reaping. That she beat the sheaves in order to get the grain out, which is something very interesting because it tells that now she's correcting her work more and more, that she's achieving some kind of a higher level of spirituality, right? And this is what Boaz actually sees. He sees that this is a process that this woman is going through, and that is very important. So when he says to her, to go to these jugs full of water that his servants have actually pulled, male servants, basically he's saying, that there's chesed, that there's this chesed available for her, that not to worry, even, he gives them the instruction not to judge her, right? So there's no restriction, no judgment, because of her work. And what you need to do is look at Ruth not as a character that is outside of you; it's a character that is within herself. This is the like a journey of her soul. What we need to do. And when it says here, this is the part I was saying, it was about an ephah of barley. When she did that, an ephah, this is according to Exodus 17:36, an ephah equals 10 omers. An omer equals a day's food for a person. Okay, so that means that 10, of course, is a tree of life, and a day's food, meaning for one person, that means that is a day that was corrected. It's basically implying the 6 days of creation and how each was basically being corrected. In this, we can go deeper on this, but it's gonna take probably like 5 or 7 hours to talk just about the book of Ruth. But she took it up and went into the city. City means the body. Every time you see the city in Kabbalah, city means the body. And her mother-in-law saw that she has gleaned, and she brought it out, and she gave to her what she had left over after she has eaten her fill. And you see, she felt satisfied. She didn't eat for her sake. She ate because of the need of fulfilling her vessels, but also she wanted to give, right? She rejected some of it, right? She did a tzimtzum, basically, in order to give back, or in order to impart to somebody else, okay? In this case, her mother-in-law. And this is giving us an insight that what is happening is that Mahut is starting to acquire the attributes of Bina, which is a desire to bestow, desire to give, okay? And that's how you need to see it. Now, after that said, her mother-in-law said to her, "Where hast thou gleaned today? And where hast thou worked? Blessed is he who took notice of thee." And she related to her mother-in-law where she had worked, and said, "The man's name where I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed is he, the Lord, who has not left off his steadfast love to the living and to the dead." And Naomi said to her, "The man is near of kin to us, one of our nearest kinsmen." And Ruth the Moabite said, "He said to me also, Thou shalt keep close by young men until they have ended all the harvest." And Naomi said to Ruth her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, and that they meet thee not at any other field." So she kept close to the maidens of Boaz to glean the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. So this is we're gonna stop here. Like I said, it's gonna be a 2-part series, and then we're gonna continue with the rest of it. And the second part, we're gonna do also meditation. It's gonna be some exclusive thing. There's a new book that I'm starting to work on, and this meditation is on that book. So you're gonna see part of the things that I have already written in the book on that meditation. So you're gonna meditate on that, at the end of the second lesson. So make sure you are back for the second lesson on the book of Ruth. I hope you have enjoyed. There's much more that we can talk, and I'm trying to put this into a nutshell and easy to understand. If you don't understand something, like I do sometimes when I'm taking classes myself of Kabbalah, I just rewind back and listen over and over until I get it. And just do the same. Until then, until the second part, shalom, and I'll see you next time.